Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see.
'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed.
Through many dangerous toils and sins, I have already come. It was grace that brought my heart to fear, and grace will lead me on.
When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've always days to sing God's praise. Then when we first begun.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this very special event. My name is Simone Lowitja, and I'm the Pro-Vice-Chancellor, Indigenous at Flinders University. And I'm from the Yangwudjata community, and absolutely thrilled to be your MC for the 18th annual Lowitja O'Donoghue Oration. First off, a huge thank you to the talented Anthony Minicon and Ellie Lovegrove for gracing us with their beautiful music tonight, and we'll be fortunate enough to hear from them again a bit later, so please thank them for their performance before. I do have some housekeeping that I do need to share this evening. So in the unlikely event that we need to evacuate, please make your way to the nearest emergency exit. Our assembly point is in the Goodman Crescent Lawns, the lovely grassy area just next to the building on King William Road side. Toilets are located either side of the front foyer entrance, and for those who require accessible toilets, these are located in the Napier building or Ligerwood buildings, and we have some friendly staff at the eastern side of the hall who can guide you to provide access to these buildings. I also welcome audience members who are tuned in with the online live stream this evening, and do remind everyone that tonight's evening is being recorded. One of the very important things we need to do is please turn off your mobile phones, or at least have them on silent. So if you could check them now, that would be wonderful. So Flinders University is pleased to be the official host of this year's event, and we thank the University of Adelaide for once again providing this beautiful venue. We have so many special guests with us tonight, and it's truly an honour to have you all here. Please join me in extending a very warm welcome to the following members. Our most important guest tonight is our orator, Romlie Mokak, and his wife, Deborah Anderson. Thank you so much for being here this evening. The Honourable Chief Justice Chris Kourakis, the Honourable Dr Susan Close MP, Deputy Premier of South Australia, Minister for Industry, Innovation and Science, Minister for Environment and Water, and Minister for Workplace and Population Strategy. The Honourable Kai Ma, MLC, Minister for Aboriginal Affairs, Attorney General, Minister for Industrial Relations and Public Sector, and Special Minister of State. The Honourable Nat Cook, MP, Minister of Human Services, Minister for Seniors and Ageing Well. Ms Lucy Hood, MP, Member for Adelaide. The Right Honourable Lord Mayor of Adelaide, Chair of the Don Dunstan Foundation. The Honourable Dr Jane Lomax-Smith, AM. The Honourable Chris Sumner, AM. The Honourable Greg Crafter, AO. Honourable Robin Layton, AOKC. Nerida Saunders, Executive Director, Aboriginal Affairs and Reconciliation. Professor Steve Larkin, Pro-Vice-Chancellor, Indigenous Engagement, University of Adelaide. So that's an impressive list that we have this evening. Our presenting partners, Reconciliation SA and Chief Executive Officer Jason Downs, co-chairs Helen Connolly and Jeremy Johncock, and members of the board. The Lowitja Institute and CEO Paul Stewart, Chair Craig Ritchie, CEO Paul Stewart, Deputy CEO Michael Newman and staff, and the Lowitja Foundation and Head of the Foundation, Deb Edwards. Also to our generous sponsors from BHP, SA Power Networks and the Government of South Australia. Members of the Don Dunstan Foundation Board, the Honourable Reverend Dr Lynn Arnold, AO, Matt Clemmo, Professor Colin Sterning and Peter Hoy, who unfortunately they both send their apologies this evening and unable to attend. Members of the Don Dunstan Foundation Committee of Management. We also have apologies from Her Excellency, the Honourable Francis Adamson, AC, Honourable Catherine Branson, ACQC, the Honourable Peter Malinauskas, MP, Claire Boyer, MP, and Chris Picton, MP. And also representing the Chancellor, the Vice-Chancellor tonight is Professor Jonathan Craig, the Vice President Executive Dean of the College of Medicine and Public Health, and most importantly, our Chancellor, John Hood. Thank you for being here and hosting us this evening, John. But we are here and we are delighted to extend a warm welcome to the immediate families of the Dr O'Donoghue with us tonight. Nieces Deb Edwards, and an acknowledgement of Amy O'Donoghue, who's unable to be here, and great niece, Mahalia. It's wonderful to have you here for this special evening or to celebrate the legacy of Dr O'Donoghue. Through our Yankunytjatjara kinship, I will also refer to Dr Lowitja O'Donoghue as my Auntie Lowitja, out of respect and recognition of our kinship connection. Finally, I'd like to welcome all the students in the audience this evening, and thanks to the generous sponsorship of SA Power Networks. If anyone would like to reflect on tonight's oration via social media, please use the hashtag LODO25. That is hashtag LODO25. And please feel free to join the conversation on your preferred platform. It is now my great honour to introduce our Welcome to Country, Ghana Narunga man, Uncle Frank Wanganeen, a respected elder and reconciliation advocate who leads Kaurna Cultural Heritage Tours and was a recipient of the 2024 Lord Mayor's NAIDOC Award in Aboriginal Achievement, who will now offer us a welcome to country. So please welcome Uncle Frank.
Thank you, Simone. Yes, a real pleasure to be with Auntie Lois Donahue, who's an orator. So, and the family, I just thank you for having me today. So now I just do the welcome in the Kaurna language. Nai tampadi tuwila brekiana, nai tampadi bamba balyarendi, Kaurna yurtiana, marita yunga Kaurna miona, nai wangadi mani nai budni, Kaurna yurtiana, tarnda nyanga wadliana. So what I just said in the Kaurna language is that I just want to acknowledge the ancestors and also recognise where we all in this event is on Kaurna country, and on behalf of the Kaurna people, I welcome you all to Tarnda Nyanga, the place of the red kangaroo, and I hope you have a great night tonight. So thank you.
So thank you, Uncle Frank, for your generosity and that beautiful welcome to country. So 2025 marks the 18th Lowitja O'Donoghue Oration, and this annual event is our way of honouring the life and achievements of Yankunytjatjara woman, the late Dr. Lowitja O'Donoghue, ACCBE DSG, born at De Rose Hill in the far northwest of South Australia. Dr. O'Donoghue was a trailblazing Aboriginal leader, passionately advancing the rights of First Nations peoples. The Oration continues her legacy and honours her friendship with former Premier and social reformer Don Dunstan. Tonight we are fortunate to hear from Mokak, who will deliver the 2025 Oration. We'll conclude our evening by joining together in singing the freedom songs, many of which you may be familiar with, a tradition started by Auntie Lowitja. And once again, we'll have the honour of both Anthony and Ellie actually leading the freedom song this evening. You'll find the words in your program, and we encourage you to lend your voices to these special songs. Tonight's oration is part of Reconciliation Week in South Australia, brilliantly organised by Reconciliation SA, and many of us may have attended the Reconciliation SA breakfast yesterday morning, where there were around 3,000 members in the audience, and it was just an incredible event to also hear the words of Jackie Huggins, but also to hear the incredible singers and also the young performers. They were just amazing. So we really encourage you into the future to attend that breakfast, which was just outstanding. A huge thank you for them for their support tonight. So we encourage you to get involved in the remaining week's activities, which you can find on the Reconciliation SA website, and there will be lots happening right around the state in your local areas, so please participate in those activities. Now let's take a moment to acknowledge the presenting partners who have made tonight's events possible: the Don Dunstan Foundation, Reconciliation SA, the Lowitja Institute and the Lowitja O'Donoghue Foundation. I'd also like to thank the sponsors for tonight's event, BHP, SA Power Networks and the Government of South Australia, for your consistent and crucial ongoing support, and we're grateful to have your representatives here tonight. Can we please give our sponsors and supporters a round of applause? I would now like to take a moment to speak about Dr. Auntie Lowitja O'Donoghue. Amongst Auntie Lowitja's many achievements, she was named Australian of the Year in 1984 and was the inaugural chairperson of ATSIC, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Commission. She was the first Aboriginal woman to be inducted into the Order of Australia and was a commander of the Order of the British Empire. Dr. O'Donoghue was made a Companion of the Order in Australia in 1999 and in 2006. and was invested as the Dame of the Order of St. Gregory the Great, a papal honour by Pope John Paul II. Aunty Lowitja's life of first began at a very young age, when she became the first Aboriginal trainee nurse at Royal Adelaide Hospital in 1954. And to continue to honour her enormous contribution, not only to First Nations peoples, but to the broader community, is why we are all here tonight. So now it's time to welcome this year's orator, Mokak, who will deliver the 18th Lowitja O'Donoghue Oration. is a Juggin man and a member of the Yaru people. In early 2024, he completed his 5-year term as the first Aboriginal Commissioner at the Productivity Commission. He has led a body of work including reviews of the National Agreement on Closing the Gap and the National Housing and Homeless Agreement, inquiry into Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander visual arts and crafts, and the Indigenous Evaluation Strategy. In this long career, has led key national and Torres Strait Islander organisations, including as CEO of the Lowitja Institute and the Australian Indigenous Doctors Association. He's previously worked for the Australian Government, where he's had policy and program responsibility in areas such as substance abuse, male health and eye health within the Office of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Health. At state level, was the first Aboriginal policy officer appointed to the New South Wales Department of Ageing and Disability. His leadership extends internationally. He was the past chair of the Indigenous Governments Awards, the National Health Leadership Forum, the Canada-Australia Indigenous Health and Wellness Working Group, and the Pacific Region Indigenous Doctors Congress CEOs Forum. He currently serves as the patron of Winanga, Nimija, Aboriginal Health and Community Services, and is a valued member of the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare Board. Can you please clap your hands to welcome Mokak?
I acknowledge the ancestors and elders of this special place, Kaurna country, and Uncle Frank, with your generous and warm welcome to your country, my lian, or my well-being, is strong and is good. I'm grateful for the permission to speak on your country tonight. Thank you, Simone, for your very warm introduction. I give thanks to the Dunstan Foundation for the invitation to be this year's speaker, the 18th speaker since Lowitja herself delivered the first oration back in 2008. I acknowledge the Chair and Lord Mayor, the Honourable Dr. Jane Lomax-Smith, and the Honourable Reverend Dr. Lynn Arnold. I acknowledge the Deputy Premier, the Honourable Susan Close, Attorney-General and Minister for Aboriginal Affairs, the Honourable Kaim Ma, and all parliamentary colleagues. I acknowledge Oration partners, the Lowitja O'Donoghue Foundation, the Lowitja Institute, Reconciliation South Australia, Adelaide University and Flinders University. And special thanks for Lowitja's family, in particular Lowitja's nieces, Deb, and I know that Amy couldn't be here tonight, and grandnieces who are present tonight. And to my Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander family, whether you are in the room or online tonight, my love and respect for all of you, for all that you do to keep our people safe and strong. I see people who I've travelled the road together with over many years here tonight, and sharing this space with you makes my lian even stronger. The enormity of the invitation to deliver the Lowitja O'Donoghue Oration this evening is not taken lightly. Lowitja was and continues to be a towering figure in our world, our matriarch, our leader, our guide. She was a leader of vital institutions, the National Aboriginal Conference, Aboriginal Hostels, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Commission, delivering unswerving and tireless service for our people. She was a fighter for our rights, fighting to always keep our mob in focus and at the centre. Standing strong in the face of racism and discrimination, both institutional and interpersonal. Showing us the way, the right way, with the fire to keep our resolve strong and the fire burning within. She was known and respected the world over. Before meeting Lowitja, I had long admired her work. It was the work that shaped my thinking and my doing. How to hold myself and to hold others at the front line of policy, and the threshold that we must aim for as emergent leaders. I met Lowitja for the first time 20 years ago in 2005 as a rookie Chief Executive Officer with the Australian Indigenous Doctors Association. I was somewhat daunted, but her embrace, her warmth and her generosity were all the ingredients a first-time CEO could ever have asked for. We were truly blessed that Lowitja was AIDA's patron, and better still, alongside co-patrons Uncle Jimmy Little and Sir William Dean, luminaries each of them. From that day forth, my life would never be the same. Lowitja had great clarity. You knew where you stood when in conversation with Lowitja. She had laser-sharp inquiry, quick wit, cheeky, and a story for every occasion. She was across all the news of the day, and our conversations would cover much ground. So many leaders, Indigenous and non-Indigenous alike, sought counsel in Lowitja, including many previous Lowitja O'Donoghue orators, including myself. When asked why she lived the life she lived by biographer Stuart Rintoul, Lowitja simply replied, "Because I loved my people." Lowitja's response is much more than one person's love for her people. It is about the power of our love for one another as Indigenous peoples. It goes to our very essence as Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Love is a human condition, and a lot like power, you know when you don't have it. At a meeting some years ago, in fact at the very start of the Closing the Gap campaign, I shared a poem by Wiradjuri poet and playwright Kevin Gilbert. It is called the International Year of the Child, and it goes like this. Australians just love to break records. Maybe that's why we've got the highest Aboriginal infant mortality rate in the world. Wouldn't it be great if Australians held the record for love? We love to break records, if only we held the record for love. Kevin makes visible the invisible. He calls out the indefensible, the deaths of our babies. With a provocation, or is it a plea, that one day the nation could be better? How animated is the nation and its citizens to not just wish for change, but to actually drive the change that's needed, to deliver a different result. As if to indulge ourselves for a moment and muse about the quest for Australians holding the record for love. Well, what would that look like? What would an Aussie value of love for one another look like, beyond the so-called values of mateship and a fair go? And what would we need to overcome to get there? It might seem strange for someone like me, having spent 30 years working in public policy, to focus on something so intangible as love. What is this thing? How do we measure it? And by goodness, how might we even contemplate a cost-benefit analysis on it? How could a former productivity commissioner be so loose as to call for a focus on love? And tonight I will not reveal some new econometric model to give us a measure of love. There will be no cost-benefit analysis. But I will ponder the idea of love, the love that we have, the love that is lacking, and its ripple effect on everything from policy and leadership to language and power. Its effect on reconciliation, its effect on closing the gap. As people, as neighbours and as citizens, we should look toward love. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have long held a deep and enduring love of our kin and our country. This is at the very heart of our existence. It defines who we are and where we belong. Through relationality and reciprocity, it is the foundation of how we relate to one another. This deep and enduring love across space and time connects us with our ancestors who are present with us each and every day. And I know that they're with us here tonight. Whether we are on our ancestral lands or far distant from our country, we are always connected to our country and grateful for country that has embraced us. We share in the joy of witnessing our people doing great things, small things and big things, in our communities and across the planet, worrying for and working for our communities and for the planet in caring for country and culture. In the arts, law, science and technology, in philosophy, culture, environment and health, on the stage, on the field, with the power of the word and the power of song, in our communities and across the planet. Our love for one another is in the raising of our littlies to be the good people for a better tomorrow. This is what's most important. The love we have for one another so that love continues through and across generations. But is our own love for kin and country enough? In his 2022 Boyer lecture, Gugu Yimidir man, Noel Pearson, said, "We are a much unloved people. We are perhaps the ethnic group Australians feel least connected to. We are not popular and we are not personally known to many Australians. Few have met us and a small minority count us as friends. We are a much unloved people." How has the public made up their minds so decidedly, informing their views? Have they privileged Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voices or authorship? Have they heard and valued Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives ahead of others? Uniformly not. Palawa academic Maggie Walter says that, and I quote, "Aboriginal people are largely invisible as people and as peoples in conceptions of everyday Australian life, except for as pejorative, statistically informed stereotypes. This lack of knowledge fosters the building of non-Indigenous to Indigenous relations around pejorative stereotypes, and this can be heard through the patter of almost thoughtless denigration and casual disrespect of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, culture, society that pervades our society's conversations. Commentators are all too quick to express a view about what we should be and how we should behave. For more than 200 years, we have been the statistical indigene, the problematic person, and particularly elevated at certain times, like some sort of periodic inflammatory condition presenting itself in 3-year cycles, a benign diversion or distraction where commentators and politicians alike reproduced harms for perceived electoral advantage. These culture wars, as they're labelled, are not an abstraction. The pain is real and the hurt and suffering are deep. Lowitja experienced all of this, and because of her work, more acutely than most. But Lowitja was about love, her love for her people. Lowitja also loved poetry. And one of her favourites was Song of Hope by Nunakal poet Ujuru Nunakal. The last few lines reflecting love for our elders and young ones to come. Ujuru says, "To our fathers' fathers, the pain, the sorrow. To our children's children, a glad tomorrow." Kevin Gilbert's provocation to strive for a world record for love is aimed at the nation-state and the psyche of our nation, for our nation to finally come to understand and to be at peace with itself. It is a call for our nation to measure what matters, to determine and design measures of what's important for and to people. In a small and remote region in the Himalayas, this importance is placed on happiness. With a development framework based on gross national happiness rather than gross domestic product, Bhutan works towards the deep and abiding happiness that comes from living a life in full harmony with the natural world, with our communities and fellow beings, with our culture and spiritual heritage. And whilst some may have dismissed Bhutan's approach as a reflection of its isolated land and therefore not relevant to the West, this focus on new ways of thinking has momentum around the world. With eminent economists, Nobel Prize laureates no less, like Amartya Sen and Joseph Stiglitz, highlighting people and place, human flourishing and equality. Another, Angus Deaton, the 2015 Nobel Prize laureate, in appraising his profession said this, and this is about economists: "Without an analysis of power, it is hard to understand inequality or much else in modern capitalism. We get little training about the ends of economics, on the meaning of well-being, and on what philosophers say about equality. We often equate well-being with money or consumption, missing much of what matters to people. In Australia, the Commonwealth Government is making its own attempts through Measuring What Matters, Australia's first ever national wellbeing framework, and I quote, "So we can better align our economic and social goals in our communities and right across our country, putting people and progress, fairness and opportunity at the very core of our thinking about our economy and our society now and into the future." And locally, the vision of the South Australian Economic Statement 2023 is for an economy that is fit for the future, improving the well-being of all South Australians, an economy that is smart, sustainable and inclusive. This is about putting people at the centre, about just, equitable and thriving societies, not simply predicated on a relentless pursuit of growth at any cost. Indigenous people know about living in harmony with country, land, sea and sky. Indigenous people know what it takes, and love for one another is a key ingredient. This same wisdom, that of love, well-being and equity, formed the foundation of the Lowitja Institute, established in 2010. Lowitja's directions to Chair Pat Anderson, board and staff were clear. And these were some of the things that Lowitja said. Employ courageous people committed to social justice and equity for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Match words to action. Deliver real, tangible and immediate outcomes. Aboriginal people and organisations must be fully involved, not just consulted, in the initiation, design and implementation of research. Aboriginal participation at all levels, building capacity, empowering communities and individuals. It's bottom up, not top down. Local solutions for local problems. Funding to massively increase. Monitoring outcomes and ensuring accountability. Disseminate findings widely. Work must be done and must be seen to be done. And fearless work for change and improvement in the lives of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. This was Lowitja's list. Little did I know then, back in 2010, that 4 years later I would become the CEO of the Lowitja Institute. And from day one my goal was to ensure that Lowitja was honoured, her spirit and energy embodied in the organisation that I led. We would be unwavering and unapologetic in our actions to ensure Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people were at the centre of our research, in the priority setting, the conduct, translation and utilisation of research. I've worked for 30 years in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander policy and the contested space of evidence building, translation and use. Spending time within black organisations and governments has been an asset, because without insights from each, it's harder to understand the other. To be in close proximity to what counts as evidence and what value is placed on different forms of evidence. To interrogate the biases of others, the blind acceptance of seemingly objective data as truth. Often ahistorical, decontextualised and aggregated, far distant from people's lived realities. This is when the finger of blame is too readily pointed in our direction, where indigeneity is framed as a risk factor, not as a strength. Mean-spirited deficit discourse that render us as problematic people, undeserving, unloved, proprietors of our own misfortune and misery, perpetuating harms upon our children, with legislators knowingly passing laws that create and amplify further harm. It is within this context that Closing the Gap has operated as a national policy framework for Australian governments for almost 20 years. In 2005, Social Justice Commissioner Tom Calma, who was last year's Lowitja O'Donoghue Orator, argued for health as a human right and set a goal of achieving Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander health equality, measured as life expectancy within a generation, meaning by 2030. A collective of Indigenous and non-Indigenous organisations came together to form the Close the Gap campaign for Indigenous health equality. The campaign still runs to this day, a campaign to have the gap closed, not just a process toward closing the gap. And I don't need to tell you how we're going with closing the gap. Why are we still languishing with results that reinforce Kevin's plea for a nation that does better? In 1990, the year the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Commission commenced, Lowitja addressed the Royal Australian Institute of Public Administration. In her aim to sensitise white bureaucrats to the idea of Aboriginal control, Lowitja made the point that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and I quote, "for so long have felt themselves powerless and voiceless in the process of government. At the heart of these issues are the rights of Australia's Indigenous population and the maintenance of an ancient culture with roots deep in time. As is powerfully expressed in the Uluru Statement from the Heart, the torment of our powerlessness reveals the structural nature of our problem as we continue to see our youth languish in detention in obscene numbers when they should be our hope for the future. Words that should tug at one's conscience and indeed go straight to the heart. But for how long do these words sit before fading into the background? The fade is not an option for our mob, no choice here, not ever for our people. It is our daily companion, our lived experience. And 34 years after Lowitja's address, the Productivity Commission, a predominantly white institution with its proud history in evidence-based policy advice to governments, arrived at the same place, that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have for so long, in Lowitja's words, felt themselves powerless and voiceless in the process of government. The Productivity Commission is a key research and advisory body to Australian governments, a statutory body protected to do its work through its own legislation. And in 2019, for the first time in its history, I became the first blackfella at the Commission table. It took legislative change in 2018 in order for that to happen. 1 year later, in 2020, governments, all Australian governments, the Australian Local Government Association and the Coalition of Peak Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander organisations signed a landmark national agreement on closing the gap. It was the first national agreement that included a non-governmental party, the Coalition of Peaks, as a signatory. And it demanded a commitment to radically change the way governments work with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. The agreement sought to, and this is the objective of the agreement, to overcome the entrenched inequality faced by too many Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people so their life outcomes are equal to all Australians, and consisted of 4 priority reforms and 17 socio-economic outcome areas. Of those 17, there are 19 targets. The priority reforms focused on partnerships and shared decision-making, building the community-controlled sector, transforming government organisations, and shared access to data and information. And 5 years into the agreement, there is still no data to measure progress against these priority reforms. The Commission's latest update on the socio-economic outcomes, often referred to as targets, published in March of this year, also shows that only 4 targets are on track to be met. Last year, there were 5 targets that were on track to be met. This year, 4, so we're going backwards in that respect. 4 are going in the wrong direction, going backwards. Some others are showing improvement, but they are not on track to be met, meaning that they're not going at the rate or the pace in order to meet that target. At its core, the agreement is about services that should be available to all citizens. These are matters of citizens' rights. These are matters of human rights. This should be for the love of the people. And in the case of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, doing away with the persistent, glaring inequity, the potential unrealised, lives shortened. In 2024, last year, a bit over 12 months ago, the Commission delivered its first review on the National Agreement on Closing the Gap, led by myself and my colleague and co-commissioner, Natalie Segal-Brown. And we heard 2 clear messages from Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. These were: the persistent barriers to progressing the Closing the Gap priority reforms result from a lack of power sharing for joint decision making. And the second is that there is a failure of governments to acknowledge and act on the reality that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people know what is best for their communities. These messages held a mirror to Lowitja's words delivered more than 30 years ago. While the review found that there have been some pockets of good practice, it also recognised that implementing the priority reforms has been weak, with actions overlaid onto business as usual approaches. And it wasn't hard to find examples of government decisions that contradict commitments in the agreement. and one that is glaringly obvious, is youth justice. The Commission proposed a number of recommendations and associated actions to move forward, and I want to highlight 2 recommendations in particular that demand immediate attention. The first is that power needs to be shared. The Commission found that the commitment to shared decision-making is rarely achieved in practice. Specifically, that governments are not sufficiently enacting the sharing of power that needs to occur if decisions are to be made jointly. Too many government organisations are consulting with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people on predetermined solutions, rather than working together to identify priorities and co-design the best approach to achieving them. This is problematic. For meaningful progress, the Commission recognised that governments must share power for decisions that affect Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. And governments need to trust that by relinquishing control, they are enabling better outcomes for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. An example of power sharing was work done through the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander COVID-19 task force. The response was collaborative, with knowledge and decision-making shared, and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander organisations and communities' expertise recognised. A second recommendation was Indigenous data sovereignty needs to be recognised and supported. The Commission found that government needed to implement changes to data systems and practices so that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people could participate in decision-making about data and to use data for their own purposes. It also found that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander organisations had difficulties accessing government-held data, and often data that government holds does not reflect the realities or hold meaning for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. For change to occur, the Commission recommended the agreement be amended to include Indigenous data sovereignty. And the second, to establish a Bureau of Indigenous Data, governed by an Indigenous Data Board made up of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. I cannot emphasise enough the need for immediate action on these, and in fact every other recommendation from the review. For too long we have witnessed government stances in multiple jurisdictions disregarding evidence, disregarding human rights legislation, disregarding commitments to the agreement. Governments have passed or amended legislation willingly, knowing that further harms will be the result for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. This reveals the limitations of the agreement, that it is not binding. The agreement should be strengthened without delay, and a process to amend the agreement should be accelerated. And while every party to the agreement has responsibility, the Commonwealth must play a leadership role. Actions, not just words, as Lowitja would say. In 1995, Lowitja wrote, and I quote, "Our history since 1788 has been a painful one dominated for most part by disease and genocide, dispossession, resistance, attempts to assimilate us, poverty and marginalisation. We do not seek to divide the nation, rather we seek special recognition of our status within the nation. We seek to be included because our past has been one of powerlessness and exclusion. In this post-voice referendum world, closing the gap is a given. And during the recent federal election campaign, both leaders reaffirmed their commitment. The national agreement has been signed by all governments. Closing the gap is a given, but it is not enough. The re-emergence of the language of practical reconciliation, reducing reconciliation to a set of delivery outcomes rather than addressing the deeper historical issues, brings this into question. Closing the gap is about service access and living standards outcomes, not reconciliation. Closing the gap is about making a measurable difference. The agreement does not have a target for reconciliation, and for good reason. It is not a vehicle for reconciliation. I would go so far as to say it would be nonsense to even contemplate it. The use of practical reconciliation in a policy context suggests a redefining of basic rights and entitlements as Australian citizens, and this applies only to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Practical reconciliation takes us back 30 years, with echoes of the then looming culture wars, a clever and cunning crafting of a distinction between so-called symbolic and practical reconciliation, a redundant and damaging dichotomy. In 2008, Lowitja spoke at a Reconciliation Week event. She said, "Reconciliation Week is always in part a celebration. It celebrates the belief in the fundamental equality of all human beings. And stemming from this belief is a worldview about how human beings should be treated. Reconciliation celebrates our intentions to connect and reconnect in ways that honour our understanding of human equality and worth." Lowitja spoke to the full meaning of reconciliation, predicated on dignity and worth, not something so blatantly transactional and reductionist. And let me be clear, if closing the gap targets are not met due to inadequate resources and attention, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people will be blamed for not doing our part for practical reconciliation. Again, our fault, again, we the problematic people. And a serious indictment on political will and policy failure. Political and policy leaders should be taking up a self-determination agenda, not a practical reconciliation agenda. And in doing so, it will mean that communities should have the power, and it will mean that communities are in control. It will ensure that decisions are as close to the ground as the beneficiaries. Look toward Victoria to see live examples of how voice, truth-telling and treaty-making are taking shape, in stark contrast to jurisdictions that have ripped up and thrown out commitments to all three. We need further dialogue between Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and non-Indigenous people to build on all our assets, our shared assets, the good things that can be built upon, and for the nation to come clean, to come to terms with its history. Or as Sir William Dean, former Governor-General, said in the Lingiari lecture in 1996, to assert our identity as a nation and the basic fact that national shame as well as national pride can and should exist in relation to past acts and omissions, at least when done or made in the name of the community or with the authority of government. Where there is no room for national pride or national shame, there can be no national soul. To arrive at a place where, as Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, our love for one another is something that is understood and valued by others, where we will all see ourselves in the frame and in the forging of a new nation. And perhaps then we will be ready for a successful constitutional change. Though the voice referendum did not deliver a successful result, and the likelihood of another referendum is unlikely for some time, there will be no substitute for structurally embedded constitutional change, whatever the proposition. Right now, the federal Labor government, with a powerful second-term mandate, must bring Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people squarely to the centre of its priorities, to figure out a way forward in light of the referendum result. The Uluru Statement from the Heart was an invitation to all Australians, a gift to the nation, a promise of a different and better future. As the Uluru Statement said, we invite you to walk with us in a movement of the Australian people for a better future. More profoundly, despite the trauma of the past and the continuing impacts in the present, the Uluru Statement from the Heart was a gesture of love for our fellow citizens. The pain and suffering of the Voice referendum continues to reverberate within Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities and is also felt heavily by many non-Indigenous people. Parliamentary and civic leadership must work hard to fill this reverberating void. Reverberations like sound waves outside the range of some, clear and high volume for others. Like the 6.2 million who voted yes, like remote communities across the north and the centre, like millions who rejected the lurch toward condoning racism and hate, like the fair-minded people who want to see a better deal for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. And I'm reminded of anthropologist W.E.H. Stanner's words a year after the 1967 referendum. No longer can governments, parliamentarians and citizens alike sit comfortably within a false reality, and I quote Stanner, within a false reality that we have been able to, for so long to disremember the Aborigines, that we are now hard put to keep them in mind, even when we most want to do so. So hard to keep them in mind, even when we most want to do so. The referendum result cannot just sit quietly or fade away, the equivalent of Stanner's disremembering. We are fatigued but not defeated, with the knowledge that the way forward does not and cannot sit solely with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. For the love of the people, meaning all people, we must find a way forward. In the late 2000s, on a visit to the National Museum of the American Indian in Washington, D.C., I came upon a magnificent work. The names of Native American nations covering an entire wall. Emblazoned across the nations were 4 simple words. We are the evidence. Powerful, purposeful, precise. This simple statement with immediate impact, and the work has stayed with me over many years, especially as I contemplated its application back home. We have a parallel in our world. The Australian Institute of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Studies map of Indigenous nations and languages. You might know, visualise that. A full colour palette of First Nations covering the continent. Colonial, state and territory borders unseen, unnecessary, obsolete. The map now adorns many places, airport lounges, building lobbies, workplaces. You'll see them in full bloom this week, such as the attention paid during Reconciliation and NAIDOC weeks. A useful tool for non-Indigenous people to engage with country and language, for each to find their place, their belonging. For Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, it's much more. It is a reminder that our people have been here since the beginning of time, that we carry the blood, the dreams, and the promises of our ancestors, the love of our ancestors, that we are our ancestors. And one day we too will become ancestors of loved ones we're yet to meet. We are the evidence serves as a reminder that sovereignty was never ceded. It serves as a reminder of the genocide and the dehumanisation of our people. It serves as a reminder of the theft of our lands, our languages, our cultures, and our wealth. We are the evidence also implores us to critique accepted wisdom and who it serves, to discard negative narratives, and to cement control of our stories and our futures. We are the evidence centres Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, our perspectives, our priorities, our knowledges. We are the evidence celebrates our existence, our persistence, and our resistance. It affirms our power as First Peoples and our enduring love for one another. In 2016, at the first Lowitja Institute International Indigenous Health and Wellbeing Conference, Lowitja said, "We must be fearless in our work for the health and well-being of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. We must be fearless in our work for Indigenous people the world over. Now is the time that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people must take their rightful place at the heart of the nation. In order to empower our capabilities, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people must be at the centre of the decisions." And finally, Lowitja said, "I entrust you all to deliver on this agenda for us." And by that she meant us all, Indigenous and non-Indigenous. Tonight we honour Lowitja from deep within our hearts. We thank Lowitja. We commit to delivering on the agenda she entrusted to us to keep the fires of justice burning strong and bright. I wish for all young people to draw strength and inspiration from Lowitja. Know that we will thrive as Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people because our love for one another is timeless. Thank you.
Nadlu Tambendi, Yalaka, Nadlu Ghana, Yatanga in Barendi. We acknowledge we're meeting on Ghana land and acknowledge elders past, present and emerging. Romlie Mokak, Deborah Anderson, Professor Simone Ter, ladies and gentlemen, what a stunning address you have given us tonight, Rom. Thank you so much. You have honoured Lowitja so very well by your oration tonight. You have picked up the theme of Lowitja, of honouring Lowitja for the love of our people. And those of us who had the great privilege of knowing Lowitja over many years know that love of people, love of community, love of hope was so important for her. And you've echoed that, and you've highlighted the fact, and your work on the Productivity Commission and other areas means that you've had to look at how the country can move forward, but you've drilled down to something deeper than what you referred to as simply statistical analyses. You've drilled down to what is at the core of being community. You've asked us to take a different lens through which we look at things, and you've highlighted the possibilities of happiness and of love, not just as shallow words, but deep words. You've spoken about our love of a country of records, and you've highlighted the sadness of some of the records that we hold, particularly in matters to do with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. And you've challenged us. Why could we not hold the record for love? And what does that then look like? And you helped walk us through what that might look like. For a start, it doesn't look like alienating, separating, blaming. Rather, it looks for a world which acknowledges the things that we have to regret and be sorry about, but look for a world where our children's children can have a hope for tomorrow. And I just wish that I had, in my time in government all those years ago, really understood the kind of messages that you have shared tonight. And I share it with my now ministerial colleagues. Voicelessness and powerlessness have been the cause of so much damage in this country. And in that very phrase, you have given us the very answer to the problem. If one is powerless, give power. If one is voiceless, give a voice. And I was really so engaged with what you were talking about, even such things as, not even such things, but important things of the sovereignty of data and how that data is used. The issue of shared decision-making and co-design, how overdue. And you have highlighted just how those things should be an important bottom line as we look forward to the future. You've identified the fact that we are so easy as a nation to disremember, but rather that we should look to how we can remember, re-put together from the important traditions that we have inherited as a people from those people who were the very first settlers of this country tens of thousands of years ago. You mentioned the fact that there can be no national soul if there's no place for national pride or national shame, that we have to be honest with ourselves. And you have said that if we are honest with ourselves, we don't look for predetermined solutions, we look to listen. We look to ensure that there is power shared genuinely within our community. And you spoke about the fact that that really means a genuine love for one another that we should then have. And that brought you back, of course, to Lowitja and her message of loving because I loved my people, Lowitja said. And you've invited us to think in the same way. And you've challenged us even to think in the same way. Rom, you have given an amazing address that has so powerfully looked with a new lens at problems that so often we looked with old lenses at. Ladies and gentlemen, would you join with me in thanking our orator, Rom Mokak. I would now like to invite you to come back onto the stage and Professor Simone Ter as well to come onto the stage. Well, I'm just going to bring to the come to that wonderful part of every Lowitja O'Donoghue oration, and thinking of what Rom has said to us tonight, it really does mean that we can sing these words, black and white together someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome. And to lead us in doing that, can I invite Anthony Minicon and Ellie Lovegrove to lead us.
Before we start, I'd just like to thank Auntie Lowitja's family for inviting us to sing tonight. It's a privilege, and thank you for the wonderful speaking. It's been wonderful. Please, you'll find the lyrics in your books, and feel free to sing along. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we'll walk hand in hand someday. We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall live in peace someday. Black and white together, black and white together, black and white together someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe black and white together someday. Truth shall make us free. Truth shall make us free. Truth shall make us free someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe truth shall make us free someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anthony and Ellie, for that beautiful song, and I know that Auntie Lowitja would be smiling. And so, as we draw this inspiring evening to a close, I want to extend my heartfelt thanks once again to our remarkable orator, Rom, thank you so much for the incredible, powerful and thought-provoking address. Your insights for the love of our people have truly enriched us all and given us much to reflect on as we continue our collective journey towards reconciliation. To all our distinguished guests, our generous sponsors, our dedicated partners, the family of Aunty Lowitja O'Donoghue, and indeed every single person in the hall tonight and online, thank you for your presence, your engagement and your commitment to the vital conversations sparked by this evening's oration. I would like to make special acknowledgement to Deb Edwards, who is representing Dr. O'Donoghue. Deb's generous advice, hard work and expertise is so integral to tonight, and we value it very much. Thank you. I'm going to give you a clap. The Lowitja Institute and the Lowitja O'Donoghue Foundation, Reconciliation SA, the Don Dunstan Foundation board members and the Don Dunstan Foundation Committee of Management, Uncle Frank Wanganeen for your welcome to country, our performers Anthony and Ellie, David Washington, the Foundation's Executive Director, and Nadi Zanos Jardine, the Engagement and Events Coordinator, interns Emily and Melna, our colleagues at Flinders University and the University of Adelaide, and of course, a huge thank you to our volunteers, without whom tonight would have not made this event possible. Please clap, all of them. So the spirit of Dr. Aunty Lowitja O'Donoghue lives vibrantly in this room tonight. And it's through events like this and your continued support that her legacy continues to inspire action for a fairer, more just Australia. We encourage you to carry the reflections on this evening forward into your own communities and your conversations. If you would like to know more about the Don Dunstan Foundation or sign up to be a volunteer, head to the Foundation's website or very active social media pages. Importantly, we're grateful to each and every one of you in the audience and on live stream for your presence and support, many of you each year for over the past 18 years. It's been a privilege to be the MC this evening. Thank you all for coming and have a safe journey home. Good evening.